everybody, and welcome to another Top 5 board gaming video. Today we are all going to become moguls. What type of mogul, you ask? Well, we are going to be real estate moguls specifically. Now, what does that mean? Well, this means that we're going to be talking about my 5 favorite games that involve real estate, buying, selling, trading, building, all that kind of stuff in various ways, shapes, and forms. Now, the fact is that these boil down to economic games in some form, right? You're going to have some kind of an economic give and take. A lot of these will have, you know, the whole buy low, sell high, all that kind of stuff. That is a theme that you will see throughout these games. That said, Monopoly is not one of the games. However, it really is a classic example of a real estate game. And the thing is that regardless of what people say, there is strategy to it. You can win, even though that a lot of people, including myself, really don't enjoy it that much. It really is a good real estate game. But all that aside, you guys know I love to hear from you, and today is no exception. Please put any and all thoughts you have in the comments below. I'm particularly curious, what do you think of the category in general? Do you think it's a necessary offshoot from the economics? Do you think it's something fun to do? Do you think it's kind of like, you know, the dream thing that we all have where it would be great to be able to buy and sell and do all this kind of stuff? Or do you think that it really reflects the real world where there's only like 4 or 5 people who are controlling all of the buildings and keeping all the little people down? Who knows? I don't know. Put anything you want to think about in the comments below. And once again, if you haven't done so already, please follow me on Facebook and Twitter, right? I would love to hear from you guys over there. Again, I'm going to post whenever I get new videos up and running and all that good stuff. Plus, I have new things like all sorts of fun articles and stuff like that that I enjoy reading. And I would love to share that with you guys and to interact with you all more. That said, I hope that you enjoy this video. We're going to get started with my number 5. At number 5, I've got a game that I have talked about a lot, primarily in the context of how much I dislike the components of the version that I have. The original version that I first played, I don't believe it's the absolute original version, was made by Avalon Hill. It had much better quality components. The one I have still works, it's still good, and it's still relatively fun. The game itself is Acquire. In this game, everybody has little tiles. When you have tiles on a grid that connect with one another and you have 2 adjacent, then you make a company. People are buying stocks in the companies, and then you have corporate takeovers and all of that kind of stuff. Now, there's a couple of reasons that this is lower on the list. The first thing is because I just dislike the components so much. Yes, that is how much I dislike them. The other thing is that this isn't so much about real estate as it is more about business and things like that. And yes, you do have the real estate of the individual little tiles that you're getting and you're holding on to and hoarding and waiting for just the right moment to play it, to make that merger or build a company or whatever it happens to be, and that's fine and great. And again, it does feel like you're really doing this to an extent. You feel like you're doing a lot of real estate trades and things of that nature, but primarily this game really feels more like an expanded type of stock game, where in the end you're talking more about the business aspects of it and the stocks that you're purchasing rather than the actual real estate. So that's why it's a little bit lower on the list. But again, it is fun and it does give you that sort of like fat cat. That was more like Jabba. But either way, it gives you that sort of feeling, right? Where you want to be in control and you know when you're doing everything and all that good stuff. But either way, Acquire, my number 5. At number 4, I've got a game that I recently purchased about one of my favorite historical figures, believe it or not. The game itself is The Castles of Mad King Ludwig. Now, for those of you who don't know, Mad King Ludwig was Ludwig II, and he was called the Mad King because he was actually declared insane, went to an insane asylum, and then he drowned the day after he arrived in a lake. It's really weird. But the strange thing about him is that he was obsessed with castles. So he built a whole bunch of castles. And in this particular case, I believe this is Neuschwanstein, if I'm not mistaken. But that is neither here nor there. In the Castles of Mad King Ludwig, the entire point of the game is that you are effectively working as a contractor to build up one of King Ludwig's castles. And the fun thing about this is that it feels, the components feel kind of like Munchkin Quest in a way. That's sort of like cardboard feeling. And it's interesting because everybody's playing as a contractor, and you're trying to appease the ever-changing rules that King Ludwig is putting upon you. So what rooms will get bonuses, how many of a specific room you want to have, how big they are, all that kind of stuff. And in this case, I love the real estate aspect because you are literally in charge of the real estate sections. In this case, the individual rooms. You are setting the costs for the other players, and then they are purchasing them from you. Effectively, they actually give you money to buy them, and then they can place them and all this kind of stuff, and you're claiming the ones that you actually place down. It's really cool. It's a really interesting combination of the buy low, sell high thing, and because not only will you be setting the prices, but you'll also be utilizing the prices later on as well. Because anytime you can pass it, you just get a bunch of money, so you got to balance it out. Where like, am I sure that people are going to pay that much for this particular room? All that kind of thing. So it's really, really interesting. It's a fun game, and it has some very unique strategic elements. And again, you're talking about building up a castle, and you are literally buying up space, physical rooms that you're then shuffling around kind of like Tetris. The really big downside for this, and the reason it's so low on the list though, is the component quality. The cardboard in this game is really, really thin, and it's so bendable, and it's not very good. On top of that, the box itself is only filled like right up to about there. It's like this box is way too big. It's kind of like Splendor in that way, where you just do not need all of the space. So it's kind of unfortunate in that way, but it's still a very good game. It's very, very fun, and very much in the real estate aspect as well. So for all those reasons, Castles of Mad King Ludwig is my number 4. At number 3, I've got a game that takes us far, far away from here. Not only far away from this country, not only far away from this continent, but far off of this planet. In this case, what are we going to be doing? We are terraforming Mars. In this game, you are a company. You are playing as some kind of a company. There's a lot of different types that are specializing in different things, and you're getting different cards to help you put individual hexes onto the Mars surface, the Martian surface. So we've got water tiles, we've got plant tiles, we've got city tiles, we've got specialized city tiles, all sorts of different stuff like that. And essentially after you place a tile, it is yours. You put a little cube on it to indicate that it is yours. The thing that I really love about this is that similarly to Castles of Mad King Ludwig, you really get the developer feel from the real estate perspective. You feel like you are the person behind the people, where you're saying like, okay, we're going to plant a bunch of trees over there, we're going to build a city over there, we're going to put a lake over there, all that kind of stuff. And you know, you need to build up your technological capabilities in order to do it. You're expending various resources of all different sorts in order to make it happen. As the planet is heating up and oxygen is increasing, then you're able to use more cards, introduce more bacteria, different plant types, all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting, and there's a lot of very, very cool technological cards involved with it. And on top of that, the scientific accuracy of this game is pretty much unparalleled for a lot of other games that I've played. I've actually done a video on that where I discussed my favorite science games, and this was one of them. And it's just really interesting in that sense. The reason it's a little bit lower on the list though is because it is not exclusively and explicitly about real estate. Like, yes, you are getting a hex and you're claiming it and it is yours, but it's not what most people think of when they think about real estate, where you're buying and selling a building or a house or whatever it happens to be like that. But still, you do have that feeling, again, of the person behind the people. And for all of that, Terraforming Mars is my number 3. Unfortunately for me, I do not own either number 2 or number 1 on this particular list, but these are the ones that really exemplify what most people think of when they think of real estate, at least from my perspective. At number 2, we have Last Will. In Last Will, the idea is that every player is playing as a potential beneficiary from a will, a trust fund, effectively, from somebody who passed away. And the point is that you are trying to spend your money as quickly as possible. That's the idea of the game, is that whoever can spend this small amount will get the big giant pile. So the faster you spend it, the more points you get, and the idea is whoever goes bankrupt first wins. A big part of this game is to buy really, you can either buy a really amazing building at a very high cost and just let it depreciate and go into disrepair. You can also buy just nasty buildings and just throw huge parties and all this kind of stuff. There's a bunch of ridiculous things that you can do. But similarly to Terraforming Mars, there's a lot of other aspects to this game. So in addition to simply buying and selling these different properties, you've also got things like paying workers, going out on fancy dates, and going to the movies and the theater and all that kind of stuff. So all the stuff that rich people stereotypically do are things you can do in this game. One of the nice things about it, though, is that the real estate aspect is really a central part of the game, where that is how you are going to be losing a lot of your money, because you're talking about properties. The only thing is that after you sell them, obviously you get a little money back, so you got to find other ways to get rid of it. And effectively, that's why this game landed at number 2 for me, because it still had those other little things where it's not exclusive explicitly about real estate or anything like that. Now, maybe it's a little bit nitpicky. It's still a wonderful game, tremendously fun, great strategy. It's a worker placement, so you get some really nice decision making and strategic thinking in it. But regardless, for all of that, the Last Will is my number 2. At number 1, as I mentioned, this is another game that I unfortunately do not own, but it's probably the quintessential classic example of a really, not typical, but what people think of when they think real estate, and that game is For Sale. In For Sale, it's a really small card game where you basically have 2 phases, where in phase 1 you buy stuff, and in phase 2 you sell it. And of course the idea is that you buy low, sell high. And again, that is the real estate market that most people think of. When you think about real estate, you think, I'm going to get some awesome things and then I'm going to sell it to somebody else at a much higher cost than what I got it for. And it's really interesting because it's kind of like power grid in a way where you've got, as you go up in the numbers, the starting numerical values, the images actually start to look better and better and better and all that kind of stuff. It's fun. It's a fun, cool little quirky game. And it's, again, it's just a card game, very, very fast, very typical, and again, probably the majority of people, when they think of real estate, this is the type of thing that they would think of. And so that's why it's number 1 on my list, For Sale. Well, folks, that's going to be it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this video on my top 5 favorite real estate-based games. Again, the vast majority of these really are economic-based in some way, shape, or form, with like the little bit of real estate sort of like sprinkled on top type of thing, and it's more of a thematic element to an economic game type of thing. But again, I am very curious what you guys have to think about this. Now again, it's not really controversial, it's not weird, it's not strange, it's not unusual, it's just something that we really don't see it too often, but I'm curious what you guys have to think about it. Would you consider games like King of the Hill type of games, like Small World, would you consider that to be real estate? Or do you think that it just has to be the very strict buying and selling in that kind of aspect? So as always, what do you think of my choices? What are your personal choices? And again, if you haven't done so already, please do check out my Facebook and my Twitter. They're both linked in the description. But regardless, thank you very, very much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.